You're on West Bremer Radio. It's 8:14. Now we've got Harold the H. Ark, P. Cock-a-doodle-doo. He's got a thing. He's always finding these old things 165 years ago.
Well, he deals in history.
Yeah, that's a fact, actually. It's a stupid comment. The most publicised elopement in Australian history came to a heartbreaking end. Well, good morning, Harold. First things first, and Sophia, lovely to know you're listening, darling. I just wanted to ask you what elopement meant. I do know, but people may not.
Well, it means you're running off together to be married, but not actually having any church arrangements or anything like that.
Not
just running off
endorsed.
without permission.
Not endorsed.
Running off without permission. That's right. It's not endorsed by anyone, the family or anything. But you were just talking about Leroy Loggins. I've got to let you know something there, because Leroy Loggins from the Brisbane Bullets. Now, back when he was from, he's from Baltimore. Back home, they never called him Leapin' Leroy or Slam Dunk Loggins or anything. They just called him Skinny. And that's a fact.
He was
so you
skinny,
can put that in your history book.
Wouldn't meet a nicer bloke.
And that was his nickname back home in Baltimore. So there you go. There's your next trivia pursuit question, Danny.
Skinny up, skinny bludge up. All right, now, what about this elopement?
Yeah, look, it was 165 years ago, in fact yesterday, that the most publicised elopement in Australian history, I think, came to a heartbreaking end. Now, it was on the 22nd of May, 1861. That's 165 years ago yesterday. Mr. Henry Wells died in his lodging house in Charlotte Street in Brisbane. Now, today, he's buried under Lang Park. But back then, it was the old Paddington Cemetery. Now, his DNA that dissipated into the Lang Park grass is all that remains, because until now, his story hasn't been told in all that time. Now, Danny, I've got to apologise here, because I can't actually prove a connection to Ipswich. But let's go with Start of Origin coming up at Lang Park, because this is a love story too good not to tell you about.
Yeah, well, Wally Lewis scored a try on his head one day. Go on.
Yeah, well, we'll go with that. So, and in fact, Alfie Langer did too. So that's the Ipswich connection, Alfie Langer at Lang Park. And now we're on to Henry Wells. Now, Mr. Wells was born in Basingstoke, Hampshire, England in 1813 and lived in Tasmania for about 20 years. He was well known as a coach driver and proprietor. Now, in Launceston, Tasmania, in 1860, a little boy was run over by a coach driven by Mr. Wells, and he was killed on the spot. Now, controversy raged when it was revealed that the child was run over, and Wells pulled up just enough to see that the child was picked up and then went on without seeing even what had happened to the boy. Now, Mr. Wells said he never saw the child till he was under the horse's feet, and he couldn't have done anything anyway if he'd stopped. But the truth is, probably Mr. Wells had other things on his mind. You see, he was driving coaches for a Mr. William Spearman, who was a licensee of the Union Hotel in Launceston. And that meant he had to spend a fair bit of time at the inn. Now, a little too much time, it seems, Danny, because he got to know Mrs. Mary Ann Spearman quite well.
Oh, Mrs.
Now, when Mr. Wells died suddenly in Brisbane in 1861, there was an incredible amount of interest. That's because he was one half of an elopement that had made headlines across the Australian colonies for the previous 4 months. He was really big news. Now, Mr. Wells had a wife and family and property at the Deloran in Tasmania. His parents-in-law were a former convict and an Aboriginal woman, the daughter of a local chief. Now, he eloped with his boss's wife, and as the woman also had a family, the husband, Mr. Spearman, was so enraged that he took measures with authorities to have the pair apprehended. And the local Aboriginal mob down there weren't happy about this either. Now, Mr. Wells and Mrs. Spearman, they were travelling under the assumed names of Mr. and Mrs. Smith. You know, you wouldn't pick that. But anyway, they eloped from Tasmania, first to Melbourne, and then on to Sydney. It was in Sydney that Mr. Wells was apprehended, but was allowed out on bail. He probably skipped bail, and the couple continued on to Brisbane and opened a boarding house on Charlotte Street. But Mr. Wells, he continued to be haunted by fears of apprehension by a detective that he'd heard was set after him. he came to really regret the disgrace he had brought on his children and on Mrs. Spearman.
Mm.
And then one day, after returning from outside in the yard, Mr. Wells spoke to Mrs. Spearman, fell down on the sofa, and died without a struggle.
Oh, my dear, dear, dear.
I know. And an inquest was held by Moreton Bay's first coroner, Dr. Kersey Cannon. The verdict was that Mr. Wells had died from disease of the heart that was accelerated and brought on by nervous excitement, brought on by the disgrace he had placed on his children and Mrs. Spearman, and the fear of arrest preying on his mind. In other words, Danny, of a nervous and broken heart at the age of 48.
Wow, what a...
Now,
yeah.
Yeah, look, Mr. Wells, and look, it was a great story because he needn't have worried because Mrs. Spearman, the following year, her daughter travelled up from Launceston and took her home.
Mm.
She promptly resumed the marriage and running the family businesses. You see, her shrewdness as a manageress and skill as a bookkeeper and accountant, they were really well known.
Mm.
Even after her husband's demise, Mrs. Spearman continued on as a landlady at the Racecourse Hotel in Launceston until her retirement. Now, when Mrs. Mary Ann Spearman passed away in 1892, her obituary made no mention of her elopement or her heartbroken lover, the death that he suffered up here in Brisbane. Now, the whole romantic episode was simply written out of history, much like Henry Wells himself. He's forgotten but still buried under Lang Park today. So, Danny, when you probably run out with the team for Game 3 in July.
I've been asked to play halfback, actually. Sam Walker from Ipswich, but, you know...
the Ipswich connection, just remember that they're probably running on top of Henry Wells there at Lang Park from 165 years ago.
A naughty boy. Now, tell us, what's your website? How can we find these stories? You've got thousands of them.
Yeah, 296 that I've been telling you about. It's history out there. You can find history out there on all the socials, and also the website historyouthere.com.
Another great story from Harold the H.